is Joy News Prime.
This is Joy News Prime and my name is Israelite. Coming up, 10 civil society organizations petitioned President Mahama to disclose the identities of persons behind the ownership of the country's oil blocks, even as the president prepares to address a conference on corruption in the UK. Survey of electricity consumers in Accra suggests the Electricity Company of Ghana may be billing them 2 times the increase approved by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. Lawyer for British fugitive wanted in the UK for drug-related crimes files fresh suit in what is being described as another attempt to stop his extradition.
And coming up in business, IMF gives government the pass mark over its performance under the fund program and says Ghana will be allowed to go ahead to issue its Eurobond this year if market conditions are good.
And police arrest sports betting company official in Kumasi for allegedly refusing to pay winnings of patrons. Now, thank you for making time for Joy News Prime is available across Europe on ABN Television. Stay tuned. Now, President John Dramani Mahama is on his way to London to join other world leaders at an anti-corruption summit being organized by the UK. A statement signed by Communications Minister Edward Omane-Boamah says the event is taking place at the time President Mahama has been traveling across the country in furtherance of his transparency agenda to account to the people of Ghana. President Mahama said before leaving Accra that the London summit provides an opportunity to demonstrate once again the measures we have been adopting to strengthen our fight against corruption, combat money laundering and counter the financing of terrorism. Now, in a 10 civil society organizations have petitioned President Mahama to cause the disclosure of the identities of persons behind the ownership of oil blocks. The groups have raised the alarm about the possibility of politicians hiding behind secretive non-disclosure legislation to award oil blocks to themselves. This comes 24 hours before President Mahama delivers that address at the Global Anti-Corruption Summit in the United Kingdom. The civil society groups have written a letter to him demanding immediate action to avoid international sanctions from the Financial Action Task Force. Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Dr. Amin Adam, he joins me on the line now to tell us more about this petition that they have signed. Good evening to you, Dr. Amin Adam.
Yeah, good evening, Israel.
All right, now you are raising some red flags essentially ahead of the president delivering this address in London. Why now?
Well, I mean, I think that the development is a process, and so is governance. Governance is a process. You have to keep evaluating what you're doing, and if there are gaps, then you seek to address them in order to improve on the governance of your resources, of your country. And so we think that in spite of the fact that civil society organizations have been raising issues on how Ghana can improve on the governance of our country, particularly in the extractive sector. The summit on anti-corruption in the UK offers us a unique opportunity, especially because our president is one of the few African presidents who will be addressing the summit. And as you know, the summit seeks to chart a global path to addressing issues of corruption. And so it is not appropriate for you to be telling the world how you can address corruption when there are very important aspects of the governance of our natural resources which are so vulnerable to corruption, which are so prone to abuse.
Right.
And we think that this is the opportunity to call on our president to clearly commit to initiating measures and committing to implementing those measures that will seek to address issues relating to corruption in the extractive industry.
Right, Dr. Amin, you're talking about, in the statement that you put out, you're talking about the possibility of politicians hiding behind secretive non-disclosure legislation to award oil blocks to themselves. What are these suspicions that you have?
Well, I mean, we know what is happening around the world, and I can give you examples in Azerbaijan, where two daughters of the president are part owners of the national oil company of Azerbaijan through companies they own in secret jurisdiction. And so that is happening. In Equatorial Guinea, we know how the son of the president has facilitated the acquisition of oil blocks. We know in Congo, where the wife of the former president also took about $5 million US, according to reports from the U.S. Department of Justice, and thereby facilitated the acquisition of oil blocks by a foreign company. And so we know this is happening around the world, and Ghana is no exception, especially because we have a very promising oil industry. Oil blocks are being awarded. Over the last 3 years, you can count up to 12 different oil blocks that have been awarded. And the ownership of most of these companies are not known. Sometimes, if you want to find out who the owners are, you are told that go to the Registrar General Department. But when you go to the Registrar General Department, what you see are the appointed directors of the company, not the eventual beneficiaries of the company. And so many people go to secret jurisdiction, especially public officials and politicians. They incorporate their companies, and then they bring their companies back to incorporate local companies where they own the local companies 100% without necessarily disclosing their identity in their registration document, except through people who are fronting for them, or through shadow individuals. And then they bring these companies back and award oil blocks to them or mining concessions to them at the expense of the real owners of the resource, who are the people. And so people are taking advantage of their unique position, their privilege to provide public service, to rather enrich themselves, negotiating their interest in contracts instead of negotiating the national interest. And this is one major problem confronting many oil-producing countries, many mining-producing countries, including Ghana. And we thought that Ghana would be taking a very bold step if the president declares and also implement a legal requirement for the establishment of a public register of legal and beneficial owners of companies operating in Ghana, their affiliates in Ghana, their affiliates abroad, so that we will be able to track the people we are dealing with, whether they are our own public officials awarding contracts to themselves or they are genuine business people who are here to contribute to the development of our country.
Dr. Amin Adam, you suggest in the statement that if this is not done, we may be, liable for some sanctions from the Financial Action Task Force. What are these sanctions?
Yes, the Financial Action Task Force also requires countries that have subscribed to it to provide in law a requirement for the disclosure of beneficial ownership information through public register. Ghana has subscribed to it. Ghana will be suspended and sanctioned if Ghana does not do that. Because under the framework for fighting money laundering, one of the instruments for doing this is the public register of beneficial ownership. So you are able to track all the people involved in a company, the sources of funding, especially also because some of these companies, when they incorporate in secret jurisdictions or tax havens, they lend money to their subsidiaries in Ghana, for instance, and then they ship profits of that company to the parent company registered in secret jurisdiction, and through that, they dodge taxes or avoid tax payment. Some people use it to do money laundering, moving money between companies in order to hide the source of that money. And so you may not know that it is money laundering unless you are able to track the movement of the money and the people behind the company. And this is why if Ghana doesn't subscribe and also seek to introduce a law and implement the provision in the law that will seek to open the corporate structure of companies, Ghana will be sanctioned. But having said this, we think that it is not because the president is going to the summit. Even when the president comes back, these issues are still relevant as far as they contribute to good governance in our country. There are other many issues that we are talking about. The right to information legislation is still pending. Okay? Apart from that, the petroleum bill has been pending in Parliament for about 3 years now, even though there are progressive provisions in the bill that requires the application of open and competitive bidding processes for acquiring oil concessions, that requires mandatory disclosure of oil contracts so that Ghanaians will know what our politicians have negotiated on our behalf. That requires a clause to criminalize public officials who are involved in conflict of interest situation in the award of oil contracts. And so these are all the issues we have put on the letter to our president to address so that we can have a very progressive and radical agenda for fighting corruption in our country.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam. He is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Moving on to other stories. A recent survey conducted by GN Research indicates that most hotels in Accra are currently paying well above the tariffs approved by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. Even though an average increase in tariff of about 60% was approved in December 2015, the company says some are having to pay as much as 140%. It says residential consumers are also paying a little over 130% more for the same or less electricity consumed, despite putting off some gadgets to save costs. Even so, a little over 2/3 of respondents have not made any formal complaint to the ECG. To get more on this research, I've been joined via Skype by Samuel Kofi Ampa, who is head of research at GN Research. Now, good evening to you, Ampa, Mr. Ampa. All right, so now your research indicates it says quite a lot. It says that though 5 out of every 10 people interviewed were aware of electricity tariff increases, they were not sure of the percentage. What does this tell you? All right, Samuel, we're having a bit of a difficulty with your Skype connection. We'll take a break and we'll be back with. We'll try and reach him on a better line. Please stay tuned. You're watching Joy News Prime. We'll be back in a bit. Now, founder of the Progressive People's Party and businessman Dr. Pa Kwesi Indom is taking a swipe at the Institute of Economic Affairs for its intention to organize a debate for the frontrunners of the November elections. The IEA on Tuesday revealed that it is considering a separate debate for the NPP's Nana Akufo-Addo and the NDC's John Dramani Mahama.
I heard over in the media, some people say they want to organize some debates. So presidential debates. And then when they are organizing debates, they say, oh, we want a debate with parties with representation in parliament. And I keep asking, what sort of an animal is that? There is no such thing in law. There is no such thing in the political party's law of parties with representation in parliament. And now somebody also is saying that, oh, maybe they will do a debate with John Dramani Mahama and Nana Akufo-Addo. And I said, is that where we have gotten to in Ghana? You know, we had an election in 2012. And someone came second. And to borrow some words from Nana Akufo-Addo, all laws be laws. If somebody lost by 5 million votes, someone lost by 5 votes, it's all loss. So how does that entitle somebody today for someone to say that, oh, that person should go into a debate with somebody else? Somebody is president today, but who should say for you and I that that person is doing such an excellent job that he deserves to be standing there to be part of a debate? It doesn't work. Everybody starts off with 0 votes, and you don't know who will bring the best idea in a debate, in a discussion. Or you don't know who will fire the imagination of Ghanaians for people to say today that, we may have voted NDC and NPP in the past, but today we have changed our mind. And we go for people.
Dr. Pakwesi Ndum is also unhappy with the Electoral Commission for not doing much to ensure a credible voters register for the November polls.
That there are 25 political parties in Ghana. It's not true, because most of them, they don't meet the requirements. So why do we have an institution we call the Electoral Commission? There are laws, and the law gives them teeth to punish anybody who doesn't do what is required of them, and yet they have refused since 1992 to remove political parties who don't do what they are supposed to do. Now, when you don't have discipline, one of these important institutions, then the results that you get, they are also indisciplined results. So it is important for us to know that there are rules and there are laws. There's a law that says nobody should go and take money from a foreigner to come and run an election. But who cares? Who reviews where the money comes from? If it comes from wherever, Russia, America, anywhere, whoever gives you money for a reason. If you give me 1 pesewa for me to go and run a campaign, you are hoping that something good will happen after that. So somebody who is giving someone millions of dollars to run a campaign in Ghana, they know what they are also looking for. But who is watching? Who is guarding? Who is making sure that only Ghana money is what we are using to run our elections?
The chairman of the Church of Pentecost in Ghana, Apostle Dr. Opoku Onyenah, is asking political parties to work together to ensure that Ghana will once again emerge victorious at the November 7 polls. Speaking at the 42nd General Meeting of the Church of Pentecost, Dr. Onyenah commended the various political parties for working together over the years and implored them to continue to commit to the peace of the country.
We are grateful to previous governments who ensured that the Constitution of Ghana was upheld. Observing that the incumbent president of Ghana is very democratic and tolerant, we trust that he and his government will continue to ensure that free and fair elections are conducted. We also commend the role that the leaders of the opposition parties over the years have played, especially the presidential candidates who graciously accepted the results. We trust that the opposition parties, especially the main opposition party, would cooperate with the government and the Electoral Commission for Ghana to once again lift high the banner of Africa. Furthermore, we believe that the success story of the elections have been partly due to the confidence Ghanaians have had in the electoral processes and the work of the Electoral Commission. We commend their good work. Finally, we congratulate all Ghanaians for the way they behaved and conducted themselves in past presidential and parliamentary elections.
Dr. Onyenah also advised the electorate to refrain from accepting gifts from politicians so they are not influenced into taking decisions that are not in the interest of the state. He also cautioned against a culture of insults on the airwaves during the political season.
Nonetheless, we are undoubtedly aware of the build-up of tension prior to every election in Ghana. This has sometimes led to a few unpleasant clashes here and there, with effect all Ghanaians, one way or another, irrespective of religion, race, social or ethnic background, or political inclination. This unfortunate incident was experienced during the current registration exercise. Political parties keep accusing one another of being the source and cause of these violent crashes. Yet to date, we are not very sure if most of these accusations have been overwhelmingly established or otherwise. This has led to many well-meaning Ghanaians living in fear during elections. We would like to once again use this opportunity to appeal to the government and to all political leaders to desist from acts of impunity and provocation and encourage their followers to do so. The culture of insult on the airwaves must not characterize this year's election. And in fact, we have spoken to people that we should not allow ourselves to be deceived by politicians who give gifts in order to influence people to vote for them. We should exercise our own conscience and then see those people who have integrity and who can continue to lead the nation. Let us conduct ourselves in a manner that will always promote peace and development of the nation.
Well, Vice President Kwesi Arthur has asked the church to use religion to enhance peace in the country, especially as the country prepares to go to the polls. The Vice President believes if religion is not used as it ought to, it will lead to intolerance and chaos.
Religion has served an important role in keeping our country safe and secure. But religion also could be a force, a negative force, that will create divisions in our country. And therefore, we have to treat religion very, very, very carefully. Maintaining the atmosphere, especially at a time like this when we need tolerance for the growth of this country. And I know that the Apostle has also spoken about tolerance today, and I want to talk about tolerance. So the Christian principles, the scriptures that we have quoted today, are necessary to maintain a peaceful, serene, non-violent state in our country as we enter this election period. And for me, it is not competition, it's a competition to serve, not a competition of who will be victorious. It's a victory for the people when elections are held. It's a victory, the people who have chosen the leaders. So it is not by compulsion that we go into elections. And we are very mindful of that. Taking as one simple quote from James, it says that, remember that it is sin to know what you ought to do and not to do it. It is sin to know what you ought to do and not to do it. And that is what I want to end. I think that we people of faith must live our faith. And
You're watching Joy News Prime. We're taking a break. When we come back, we bring you business news. Please stay tuned.
Good evening, Israel.
And welcome.
Yes, thank you.
All right, what's coming up in business?
Well, in business, finally, the third review of the IMF has ended, and the IMF has now passed Ghana's performance under the fund.
So we're going to get a third tranche?
The third tranche of the release of the fund. Exactly.
All right.
See, but some questions that baffles my mind is that these factors that were considered during the review, that is the state, the true state of the public debts, and also the election years pending, does that mean that the IMF has okayed that we don't have any,
that the IMF
is spending too much?
You probably suggest that the IMF is convinced
that our public debt is just okay within limits. Maybe that's what it means. And you and I will be wondering whether that is correct.
We probably should be getting some further and better particulars from them.
Well, maybe.
Right.
All right, thank you very much for joining me on the business. And the International Monetary Fund has given government the pass mark over its performance under the fund program The IMF disclosed this after it completed its 2-week visit to Ghana. There's more on the fund's comments on the economy in this report.
According to the mission led by Joel Tuhas Bernate, implementation of the program so far remains satisfactory. This is because the required programs aimed at reducing the rising public debt is on track. Mr. Tuhas Bernate was, however, worried that the authorities have delayed in the preparation of new public finance management law and the amended Bank of Ghana Act. He also noted that a lot more needs to be done to bring the public debt to an appreciable level. The mission noted that the marginal stability recorded by the Ghana cedi can be attributed to recent hikes in policy rates by the Bank of Ghana. The IMF was of a view that the introduction of petroleum and electricity levies by government was critical in addressing the difficult financial position of some state-owned enterprises. Government, on its part, indicated during the discussion that it would take necessary steps to reduce its expenditure because of declining oil revenues.
Meanwhile, Ghana would be allowed to go ahead and issue its Eurobond this year if market conditions are good. That is coming from the IMF. Government is planning to turn investors outside the country to raise about $1 billion. However, with the country's rising debts, there are concerns it might not be prudent to go ahead with this, especially considering the high interest rate regime on the international market. The IMF mission, the head of the IMF mission to Ghana, Joel Tuhas Bernate, answered a question posed by Joy Business at a press briefing in Accra.
This strategy has to adapt to market conditions. Right now, the yields on Ghana's bonds is very high. I think that the authorities would not be willing to issue at such high rates. Now market conditions can turn and become much more favorable in the coming period, which then, would affect the analysis. What is important is that, given the cash resources that the authorities had at the beginning of this year, this gives them the flexibility to adapt their financing strategy to the market conditions as they will evolve. So we don't see a risk in that regard.
And in another development, the IMF is attributing delays in investor response to the IMF program in the upcoming elections. Investors are yet to react by bringing in their required capital almost a year after the fund program. But Tuhas Bernate is hopeful this will improve very soon.
I think, one concern which is often mentioned is that we are in an election year with possible pressures on spending. I think when markets will, continue to see good progress, and I think what we are saying today and what we will also explain in our report for this third review should comfort the markets in terms of changing perception. They often, look more backward than forward. And I think as we advance in this year and continue to see strict fiscal discipline, and in that regard, the authorities at the highest level have continued to express their firm commitment to the program and achieving, in particular, the fiscal consolidation.
Now, away from IMF, inflation for the month of April has dropped marginally. The new rate is 18.7% from the March figure of 19.2%. The Statistical Service attributes the decline to the relative stability of especially the prices of petroleum products. This was announced by the Deputy Government Statistician Ban Wadie in Accra.
The key drivers were transport, that is for the non-food. The key drivers were transport, water, housing, electricity, gas and other fuels, education, recreation and culture, and clothing. When you look at the inflation rate for housing, for rent alone, we recorded a rate of 72%. But what we are saying is, for this broad group, housing, water, electricity, gas, water and other fuels, we are giving you an average figure for the group. But the sub-components in that group can it can be disaggregated into subcomponents, and the inflation for each of the subcomponents can be produced. In fact, we have produced it, but for convenience of assimilation by the public, we have decided to give you just average figures for the main subgroups.
In other stories, AngloGold Ashanti Ghana has filed a request for arbitration with the International Center for Settlement of Investments Disputes, CSID, based in Washington, D.C., to resolve the worsening illegal mining incursion on its Obuasi mine. The company said it had been compelled to invoke its mining lease dispute resolution provisions at Obuasi, where the security situation continued to deteriorate due to the failure of government to restore law and order at the mine.
On the 30th of January, at Obuasi, there were incursions in the northern part of our operating footprint. This was turned back by the security forces. The mining lease is quite extensive, and we have applied to the government to reduce the tenement size by some 60%. And the area where the Galamsey are active is right in the north at the Kador area. At this point, the actions by our security people and with the support of the police has quarantined their activity to that area. As the situation was volatile, we took steps to remove all non-essential people from the mine. We have kept government stakeholders updated on developments and every step of the way, as we've engaged with the authorities to the highest levels for the re-establishment of law and order and for the removal of illegal miners from the site. Our priority is a safe and peaceful resolution to the current situation. Last Monday, a high-level delegation was sent to site to evaluate matters, and we await formal feedback from that visit. We're hopeful of a resolution very soon, but at this stage we are continuing to work with the police to prevent expansion of the Galamsey beyond the north.
Meanwhile, government says it is working to address concerns of AngloGold Ashanti over how its operations are being threatened by illegal miners. This follows AngloGold's decision to take Ghana to the International Arbitration for Settlement of Investment Disputes in the U.S. This is basically due to government's failure to restore law and order at the Obuasi mine. Dr. Tony Orbin is Chief Executive of the Minerals Commission.
I don't think this can be described as a central feature of Ghana. I don't think this is what you see in Ghana. It is something that has occurred in one of our key mining communities, and that should not be seen as the major feature of the mining environment in this country. I'm sure you and I would agree that Ghana still maintains a very peaceful atmosphere. Ghana is a very open country. Well, we have the geology and all that. This is not to belittle the situation that AngloGold Ashanti finds itself, but cannot be described as the central feature of the mining environment in Ghana.
All right, so it's midweek, and we would want to know how or the direction to which the various equities and the commodities have been touring. And John is here to tell us more about the stock market. John, good evening.
Good evening, Emmanuel. The market today actually quite responding very well. As average volume almost recorded about 102,570. Quite a significant movement from that of yesterday, because yesterday we recorded almost about 70 plus thereabouts. So I think it's been quite good at a total value of almost about 400,000. That's the news out there. So Wednesday trading being so good so far, the best for the week. That can be established, because Monday was quite very low, Tuesday not up to, and then today being Wednesday somehow different. But then still market capitalization keep losing. Now it's actually dropped to over 53,974,000,000. Quite significant movement there of the market cap, meaning that most of the companies listed on the exchange are gradually losing their value to the market. Not the fact that their assets are reducing in value, no, but the market price also